Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first video of Big T TV. Tonight, I'm going to cook something pork-tastic for you guys. Over here, I have all the ingredients laid out. We've got our pork shoulder. Now, I like to use pork shoulder because it's a very cheap cut of meat, but it does take some time to cook. Low and slow is really where it's at. This is going to be a tomato-based recipe, so we have a jar of crushed tomatoes, and I prefer to use the jars because I don't really like the off taste of the tin. A lot of you might be in that same boat. There is a tin of tomato paste that I do have here. I've got some beautiful carrots that I picked up at my local farmer's market. Same thing with the tomatoes. This is a different variety of tomatoes. They're awfully sweet. They're a unique color. I just like to use them because they're really fresh and firm, and sometimes it's really tough to find some decent tomatoes. There is going to be a little bit of lemon here to kind of complement the pork. I've got 6 white potatoes, 2 candy cane beets. These have a lot of flavor and they add that touch of sugariness to the stew that we're going to be making today. And I'm going with red onions just because I'm trying to have a variety of colors. It's not really a preference thing. You can use any onions that you want. For fresh herbs, I've got thyme and oregano. There will be some other dry herbs that I will be adding to the mix as we go, and I'll kind of list all those out within the details of my video and on my website. There's celery. There's a bottle of beer. You can use any beer that you want, but I prefer Innis & Gunn just because of the malty taste that you get from the whiskey barrels. Dry pepper, some salt, and I really like this bouillon. You can use a box of stock, or you can make your own stock. I will show you how to do that in some later videos. But for this particular recipe, I'm going to be using this Better Than bouillon. You mix it with boiling water works best. It just breaks down the bouillon a lot faster that way. But the taste from this is phenomenal. I really recommend you guys try this out. And we're going to cook everything within a Dutch oven pan. These are Lagostina cast iron. If you have a cast iron pan, I do recommend it. It really locks in the flavors. You don't have to move things around when you're done. Once you put it in the oven, it's just set it and forget it. Welcome back, everyone. Now I've got everything prepped and ready to go here. Everything's a large dice so that when you cook it, it doesn't all break down into mush. You want to make sure that you're dicing your vegetables so that it's a fairly large chop. So let's go ahead and let's start searing off this meat. So I'm going to start by adding just a bit of oil to the pan to kind of get it going. I've got this on about a medium-high heat at the moment, and you want to let your pan get a little hot. So the moment you add that oil, it starts to smoke just like that. So when you add that meat, it starts to sear right away. You might even want to turn that down just a tad. Now don't worry, it's going to shoot a little bit of grease out, but you need that nice high heat to get that sear going. But don't max it out, because you'll end up burning things. And you want to make sure that you do this in batches. You don't want to cook everything too fast. And you got to make sure that it has enough room to breathe in there so that we get a nice sear on that meat. That's about all I'm going to kind of do for now. It's going to probably take me about 3 batches to get this going. But I'll show you the results as we go in between. Okay, now the most important thing is when you put that in, make sure that you don't start flipping it around right away. You want to give it at least a couple minutes to start to develop a sear, and at this phase I'm not using any spices. So we're about ready to flip. It's been about 2 to 3 minutes that it's been sitting in there, probably closer to the 2-minute mark, and now I'm going to go ahead and start to flip it. You can start to see it charring near the bottom, developing some of that color. That's when you know it's getting ready to flip. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a quick stir. And I'm just going to make sure that I get everything over onto the opposite side so we can start to caramelize. And we want to caramelize everything because that's the flavor country at the bottom of the pot. There we go. Now I'm not going to show you doing all of the batches. What I'll do is I'll go through and I'll finish searing off all the rest of the meat, get that all ready, and then we'll get it a little closer to when we're ready to deglaze the pan. Your final product should look something like this. Everything should have a lovely crusty coating on it. You'll end up having to flip it maybe 2 or 3 times, but you shouldn't have to cook it for more than about 2 minutes on each side. I'm ready to deglaze, so I've lowered the heat and I've given it a moment just to kind of adjust down to the lower heat. It is cast iron, so it does retain the heat quite well and for quite some time. So I'm going to start by adding the beer. This is going to create some bubbles. See? Which is exactly what we want. Now we want to let that simmer until the bubbles stop. And in the meantime, we're just going to stir that around, and we want to get all that wonderful goodness off the bottom of the pan. It should stop bubbling after about 30 seconds or so. It doesn't take long for that alcohol to boil off. And as you can see, all of that wonderful goodness has now been soaked into the liquid. We're going to give that just a few more seconds here. And then we're going to add our stock next. And this is a liter of stock, so I've mixed that up with boiling water again. Break all down that goodness. And we're just going to stir this together a tad. Smells good. We're going to add our crushed tomatoes, whole jar. And we add about half a tin of paste. So about that much, not much more than that, just a tad. That's about all we should need. It's about half a tin of paste. We're going to add all our spices. We're going to raise the heat, and we want to get this back up to a simmer before we re-add the the pork. That'll be another recipe. And this is just a mixture of salt and pepper again. Just add a little for flavor at this point, but we will introduce a bit more later. And our lemon juice, we want to add that now. Our minced garlic. And we stir that all up. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to get this back up to a light simmer. And then we're going to add our pork, and we're going to put that into a preheated oven at 400 degrees. With these cast iron pots, you want to use a little bit higher heat than you would with normal cookware. So 400 is where it's at. Once you've got your broth bubbling, just like this, you want to go ahead and add your onions at this point. And the pork. Try to make less of a mess in the process. Once that's added, just stir it up. And get it back to a simmer, which should only take about another minute or two. Once it's back to a simmer, put the lid on, throw it in the oven for an hour, and then we're going to take it out at the hour point and add our vegetables, but I'll get back with you at that point. Welcome back, everyone. we're going to take the stew out of the oven now and take a look at it, give it a stir, give it a bit of love, and then we're going to mix in all the vegetables and send that sucker back in there. Ooh, she's hot. Ah, smells good. All right, we're going to take a thicker utensil, and we're going to just start throwing in the vegetables as gently as we can. Mix in most of the potatoes, just in case if I have too much. We're going to probably want to get that started. Mix in the rest of the carrots. And these vegetables are going to juice off too, so it's going to add to the stock as it cooks. But this is going to have to go back in the oven for another hour and 15 minutes before this will be ready. By then the vegetables should all be nice and soft, but they won't be mushy and falling apart, so they'll be just right. And then you just want to add a bit more oil to the top here, because the vegetables are going to need it. You mix that in, put it back in the oven, throw it in for another hour and 15 minutes, and I'll be with you to see the final results. So it ended up taking a little bit longer to finish the stew. I ended up having to cook it for a full 2 hours. So add 45 minutes to your cooking time and it should be perfect. And here is the finished product. Boy, it smells good. And here's what it looks like plated. You can always add some scallions to it or a bit of sour cream, however you want to top it, but it's delicious just the way it is. And for those prepping meals in advance, this 7-quart recipe will produce 3 easy suppers and 3 delicious lunches. Thanks for watching, and check out my other videos on Big T TV. If you like my videos, subscribe below.